The tag fighting game subgenre. Whether you like realism, anime, or maybe a bit of both, fighting games, for decades now, have included tag modes. If you haven't guessed by now, tag fighting games involve 2 or more characters on a team, and they can tag in and out pretty much whenever they want. This style of gameplay has been in both 2D and 3D fighting games, and they've existed for a long time, with many of these games being received quite favourably. Today, however, I want to talk about the opposite of that. A tag team fighting game that wasn't looked at with high praise, with one of the weirdest character rosters I've ever seen in a fighting game. That's right, I'm talking about SNK's forgotten fighter, Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. Released in the arcades on their Atomic Wave hardware in 2005, and then on the PlayStation 2 in 2006 in Japan and PAL territories, and 2007 in North America, Neo Geo Battle Coliseum is an odd one. It sort of plays like the King of Fighters and has the tag mechanic found in KOF 2003, but it does its own thing with a lot of other mechanics and overall feel of the game. Featuring characters from classic SNK games like KOF, Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, Metal Slug, and more, this game should have been a slam dunk to close out SNK's presence in the PS2 era of games. But unfortunately, it really wasn't, so let's find out why by analysing the game and learning a bit about it. Let's begin with the character roster. Neo Geo Battle Coliseum contains 40 playable characters. Obscure series like King of the Monsters, World Heroes, and Aggressors of Dark Combat are represented in the game, along with mainstream SNK series like the King of Fighters and Fatal Fury. One thing I noticed is that this game has a lot of KOF characters compared to other series. Metal Slug only has 2 characters, for example, whereas when you add up the total of King of Fighters characters, as well as characters who are technically from Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, this game has 17 characters. That means that nearly half of the character roster is made up of characters from the King of Fighters. I really like KOF and its colourful character rosters, but SNK has so many series that could have made the jump to the fighting game world in this game, and while some obscure characters like those from The Last Blade make an appearance in Battle Coliseum, they still pale in comparison to the usual SNK fare, like Terry, Geese, Shermie, Robert, Ryo, Mai, Iori, Rock, and Kim. I think it would have been really cool if SNK really went down into the depths of obscurity and featured characters from games like Twinkle Star Sprites, Ikari Warriors, or Sengoku, and using their characters to replace maybe 4 or so KOF characters? I think it would have been an interesting curveball, but to be honest, I get why SNK wanted to heavily feature King of Fighters. It's their most popular series, and it's still going strong to this day. With all that being said, don't think for a minute that this game is just a random collection of KOF characters with some extras thrown in here and there, because it really isn't. Even though just over 40% of the roster is from King of Fighters, that means that 60% of the roster is from other games. Samurai Showdown, Metal Slug, The Last Blade, Athena, World Heroes, King of the Monsters, Aggressors of Dark Combat, and Fuun, I think that's how you pronounce it, are all represented in Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. If you want a battle-scarred shoot-em-up character on a team with a monster robot, then look no further, because I think that this is the only game that's going to let you do that. A great thing about this game, other than the obscure series and characters being represented, is how different they all feel to play. Neo Geo Battle Coliseum has 5 buttons to work with. You have your light punch and light kick, along with your strong punch and strong kick, which are called SP and SK respectively. To top things off, you have the E button, which you use to tag in and out. Other techniques are performed with the E button, like the double assault, which is performed with quarter circle forward and E. This move does not do a lot of damage, but it's fantastic for removing the opponent's red health. Or how about the guard cancel tag attack, which is done by pressing E when blocking with 1 bar of meter to get the enemy off you. There are other advanced techniques like this in the game, but let's dial it back a moment and focus on the basics. On the character select screen, you pick 2 characters and their order, and when you get into a match, you fight one-on-one like you would in the King of Fighters, but with the ability to tag almost instantly at the push of the E button. Like other tag games like Tekken Tag Tournament, you don't have to take out both of the enemy's characters to win the match, you simply have to eliminate one of them. This, along with the often excessive amount of red health, makes it tense. You want to tag frequently to balance your character's health bars, but not so frequently that it becomes obvious to the enemy when you'll be left open to being punished. Some characters, like Metal Slug's Marco, have lots of moves to remember, so adding extensive move lists on top of the general tag team shenanigans makes for some fun and interesting gameplay mechanics. Speaking of Marco, he's unlike any other character in this game that I tried out. I mean, all you do in Metal Slug is run, jump, and shoot, right? so most of Marco's moves in this game involving using some kind of weapon. Whether it's his handgun, giant machine gun, grenade, or even the prisoners of war you rescue in Metal Slug, he's got lots and lots of options to choose from. One thing I mentioned before is just how different all these characters feel. In my team of Shermie and Asura, I can use Shermie to rush the enemy down and grab them a bunch because A, it's good damage, and B, it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. But if Shermie's on low health, I can tag in Asura and start to zone with his giant bow and arrow and blade that shoots up from out of the ground. Two completely different playstyles and character archetypes are featured on my team, and there are 38 other characters to choose from. From big characters, small characters, rushdown characters to zoner characters, Neo Geo Battle Coliseum has lots of character variety, which is fantastic for a tag fighter. So what content does Neo Geo Battle Coliseum have to offer? I'm glad you asked, voice in my head, because the game contains various modes for you to play, but there isn't a grand story mode in case you were wondering. The game does have a narrative, but I'm not going to summarize it in a big portion of the video, because that will take me forever to edit, so here's my attempt to sum it up for you. Got that? Good. The game has arcade mode in giant quotation marks, but it's only this in name only, as it's admittedly very different to how arcade modes usually work in fighting games. Instead of picking a team, fighting enemies, and then beating the final boss, it works more like a survival mode. So after picking your characters, you fight against numerous randomly generated teams until you lose. Once you eventually lose, you are taken to one of 4 bosses that differ depending on your performance. You're either going to fight Mizuchi, an original character who's a clone of Orochi from the King of Fighters 97, Neo Dio from World Heroes who looks nearly identical to Capcom's Blackheart sprite in Marvel vs. Capcom, King Leo from Savage Reign, another obscure SNK game, and finally, Goodman, a character so overpowered to the point where he had to be banned. That's it for the main arcade mode, but when it comes to other content, the game has Arcade Versus, which is just the standard versus mode of the game, Tag Play, where you need to take out both characters in order to win instead of just one, Survival Challenge, which is survival mode, Practice, and Gallery. This is a very bare bones game in terms of content and replayability. There are a few unlockable characters, but once you've unlocked them, there's not much else for you to do outside of fighting the AI or another person. Once I got bored of repeatedly throwing enemies around like ragdolls with Shermie, or hitting them with Terry's Buster Wolf, I realized there wasn't anything else for me to do. There are no bonus stages, combo trials, mission mode, etc. So the only thing you can really do in Battle Coliseum is fight over and over and over, without much interesting supplementary material to keep you motivated. Look, maybe I'm being too harsh, however, so let's get a second opinion. Neo Geo Battle Coliseum has a current score of 66 on Metacritic, indicating mixed reviews from critics. A trend I noticed in most of the reviewers' opinions is that most of them liked the character roster and gameplay, which I agree with. I think that SNK nailed these parts of the game. Everything else, however, was criticized or deemed to be mediocre, and once again, I gotta agree. The graphics aren't as colourful and vibrant as something like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the music is forgettable, and the initial thrill of having all these SNK characters to play as wore off really quickly when I first tried it. I went from excitedly firing up the game, ready to play as the Metal Slug and Samurai Shodown characters, to being a bit disappointed when I started learning the game in practice mode. The reason why tag team fighting games such as Marvel vs. Capcom are beloved is that, among other things, it changes up the gameplay formula when compared to the more footsies-based Street Fighter series, what with the inclusion of air combos, super jumping, screen-filling specials and supers, touch of death combos, assists, infinites, and more when compared to the more restrained Street Fighter. Neo Geo Battle Coliseum doesn't change the SNK formula much at all, outside of having a tag button, and hell, even that wasn't new to the world of SNK fighting games. Even though the game was a mixed bag on the PS2, SNK ported it over to the Xbox 360 via Xbox Live in 2010, and that version has a 64 on Metacritic, so I can't say that this game is aged like a fine wine over time. Battle Coliseum is also downloadable on the PS3 via the PlayStation Store, but this version of the game is only available in Japan, which I find weird because the 360 version is available worldwide. I made this video to cover and explore a forgotten tag team fighter that I've never played before. I've been a big fighting game fan for all my life, but I only got around to trying Battle Coliseum very recently, and even though I don't think that the game is anything special overall, I'm still kind of glad that I tried it out, mainly because it has Shermie in it, let's be honest. A fighting game characters with Metal Slug in it should have been awesome, and part of my soul is now permanently pissed off at SNK for not making it so, and that kinda bums me out a bit. I'm kidding though, jokes aside, I think the concept of an SNK tag team crossover fighting game is awesome, and I hope they give the idea another shot in the future with a new fighting game for modern systems. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you learned something about the game, and I'll see you in the next one.